Ah, ladies and gents, don't you just love it when you go live and the mic doesn't work? Well, good evening, ladies and gents. Welcome to the virtual racing compound for the 8th round of the Sunday GT Masters. My name is Hasse Rømer. I'm joined by the brilliant Ed May, and we're at Montreal, Edward, a track that we generally rarely really get to visit, and much underserved, I think. It's a brilliant track. It's good for racing. I think it's going to be good tonight here as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's a track that also leaves very little room for error, especially through the first half of the lap there, where you've got those tight, twisty bends with concrete barriers either side ready to greet you into their cool, cold embrace as you meet unforgiving concrete there and likely picking up damage. Hopefully we won't see any of that here tonight, and what we will see is some excellent racing, especially in towards turn one. That's the place where we've seen countless amazing battles throughout the years here at this circuit. Following Gaston Meseroni making his way towards this first bend, and you're seeing just how much curb they are taking. That's a huge amount there. I'm not sure if that is going to get him an off track or a slowdown or what, but that was a lot of curb, and I think that might have been a slowdown because he's just peeled off over onto the side of the track.
Well, in a situation like this, it's all about trying to find the limits as well, and really see just how far you can push it before qualifying. You certainly don't want to get any of the flying laps in your qualifying session ruined. We're going to have a quick look at I'm going to have a quick look because I don't have the standings in here, but I'm going to have a quick look regardless on the championship standings. Charlie Nielsen with 278 points, the championship leader. Well clear by now of Remco Barlow with 276. And then on 242, that's Patrick Gannon. So still a close fight there for second. Third, well, that's Gannon. Fourth, of course, Gaston Meseroni and Nicolas Cucato. Just 6 points between them on 222 and 228, respectively. In the AM standings, it's Alfredo Tricarici ahead of Ari Sherwood by a good 30 points. That is, 32 points actually. Relatively comfortable. Sherwood missing that last round. That might just be expensive for him in the end there. Darren Fellows, who I think is pulled out of the championship, I'm afraid. Such a shame. Still sitting third in the standings. Ahead of Matt Maddox and Chris Pio. And I'm just going to ask you this straight away, because Charlie Nielsen has been so strong over these last few rounds here of this championship. What can anyone really come up with to bring an end to his reign and to the supremacy that we're seeing from the Swedish driver?
Hope he slows down, to be quite honest with you. Charlie Nielsen is, quite frankly, on another level right now. And we're just having a look at the lap times that are coming through. His last lap time was purple sectors across the board. Fastest on the track in Sector 1, fastest on the track in Sector 2, and fastest on the track in Sector 3. So he is absolutely rapid here, and he's, reached an entirely different level. He was already a very quick driver at the beginning of the season at Interlagos, where he picked up that podium, and from then on, he's just been getting faster and faster every single round. Last time out at Zolder, it was a complete washout, wasn't it? It was him fastest throughout the entire race, leading every single lap, and of course coming through to take the race victory. He's seemingly going to be repeating that performance here tonight.
So it would seem indeed. We got 16 cars signed up for the race here, but 2 of them has yet to make a first lap. Speaking of the devil, Martin de Jong for the Angry Sheep Sims. Again, I'm going to comment on what that abbreviates as, but he's made it out in the BMW, Edward. We've mentioned him so many times, and he's one of those drivers, certainly with the pace too as well. We'll see just how he comes through on this race tonight. And I just wanted another thing about the Audi as well, that we've seen Charlie Nielsen swing with so well this season. How do you think it's going to fare along here at Montreal? It looks deadly in practice here so far.
I think if there is any track that is going to suit the Audi, it would be this one, just because of the nature of the quick direction change. You want a car that's a bit nippy, and the Audi certainly is. But on the other hand, the Audi is prone to having that over-rotation at the rear, and that's something you really don't want coming through these bends, especially with the walls so close. But we've seen him before. have completely faultless races. You'll need that tonight. And I think that's the only thing that Masaroni, pardon me, Matthew Forrest of Heat Plaza, the chasing pack in behind, will have to hope for is a mistake from Charlie Lund-Nielsen.
Yeah. When you've got a driver on that level, there really isn't much else to hope for in the end. By the way, we've got a fair few people coming in chat here early. That's nice to see. Welcome to all of you. Nice to have you along. Such a pleasure. Of course, we can have a shout out to Linus Gurr. At the very least. Traffic here on pit exit. Something that we've seen in Formula 1 as well across the years. Create a bit of trouble. They've tried a few different solutions there to the pit exit. I remember in what I recall as being in 1999, Michael Schumacher sort of pushing Heinz-Harald Frentzen off into a relatively heavy shunt there. That was the old pit exit when it came out, but directly at the end of the pit exit, they've sort of moved it to the entrance of turn 2 there on the outside. Saying that, Edward, it's not like it's amazing coming out there as well. It's very easy to get tangled up with someone.
Oh, absolutely. Obviously, with these 45-minute races that we have here tonight, there is a mandatory pit stop as the drivers are only fueled up for 50% of the race. That can get them, well, not 50% of the race, 50% of their total fuel capacity, which can get them around about somewhere between 25 to 30 minutes. That's often the sort of window where we see drivers opting for their pit stops. And that might be a ways for drivers to think about getting into this race, is messed about with Charlie Nielsen on a potential pit strategy. And something as well that Charlie will have to worry about is because he's quick, he will most likely come around to lap some drivers, and traffic can certainly be a nightmare around here. It's so difficult. Not only is the quicker car to get around, but also for the slower car to let the fast cars by without losing any time themselves.
That's always kind of a rough discussion to have, because the slower cars need to get that lap in qualifying as well. And say with a relatively small grid size of 16 here, they should be able to get the spread out relatively quickly here. Of course, some of the drivers will be concerned that might cost them that extra lap and get to put in at the end of the session, but hopefully they're not gonna need it too much.
Another thing as well to worry about at this track, Hasse, is because of the sort of boxed-in nature of the track, is the fact that if there is an incident at the front of the field, it's difficult to make your way through because the cars will essentially block the road completely. There's no room to go onto the grass to go around an incident because, well, quite frankly, at points in the circuit, there is none.
Yeah, that's a very old school thing about this track, and something that we wouldn't necessarily see get to happen at that many circuits. It's great to see, and it creates a different sort of drama. Any mistake here is really going to be punished heavily. And it's a different kind of fear factor. Not so much maybe in the sim, though. It is definitely a thing that keeps you attacking that little bit less if you don't have the talent. But in real life, coming around here, I would expect it to be pretty frightening, to be honest, until you get used to it. With the walls coming closer and closer on a fair few occasions, as Charlie Lund-Nielsen demonstrates here. We're on board. I think a lot of you out there will know this track quite well as he comes into the hairpin. Aiming for the late apex. Slowing the car down there beautifully. Edward, that's...
Superb lap this so far, Hasse. Purple in Sector 1 and 2.
We'll see just how the benchmark will be set down. I think it's going to be by Charlie Lund-Nielsen, but it all remains to be seen here into the final chicane. Will he avoid the wall of champions? Yes, indeed. Remco Barlow, but 2 tenths quicker is Matthew Forrest. Let's see Charlie Lund-Nielsen here. He goes to the top there, a half a second, 6 tenths quicker than Matthew Forrest. And
that's only the first lap. Sometimes in these cars it can take a couple to get up to the optimum window. We have seen drivers get quicker and quicker as the sessions go on, but that is a very nice time from Charlie Nilsson. BMWs, as you can see, they do their sort of one quick lap and then come into the pits. That is Gaston Maceroni and Nicholas Cucato behind the wheel of the BM. Wanting to come into the pits, Cucato now on an out lap, as will be Maceroni. Coanda Racing teammates helping each other out as they have done so many times this season. As that was a bit twitchy out of that right hander by Ari Sherwood, almost into the wall. I think he kept it pinned, you know. Great car control. But you can see the difference between Ari Sherwood and Charlie Nelson. Charlie was really hitting the curbs, and Ari Sherwood sort of had to back out, and that might be just down to that big slide they had coming out of that right hander has brought too much heat into the tyres, and I think you might be seeing Ari just sort of backing off a bit more, getting ready for a second lap here.
That might be it. They're very close here. Matthew Forrest with a strong lap here early days. Half a tenth up on Gaston Maceroni, who's a tenth and a half up on Nicolas Cucato, who's 100th of a second up on Remco Barlow. All of them, those 6/10ths of a second behind on Charlie Lund Nielsen. They're going to be wondering how on earth they're going to find that kind of time here. Let's go on board now with Matthew Forrest. So I'll just try to talk you through this track here. A bit of a kink to the start-finish straight. As you come down towards turn 1, complicates the braking zone a little bit. Take as much as you can on the inside, then slow the car right down and keep it nice and tidy. Carrying as much speed as you can to the following quick section. Turns 3 and 4, the right left here. Easy to make a mistake on the curbs. As we spoke about just a few minutes ago, the walls are right there. Most cars will see it flat up through this section before the left-right chicane. It's not really a chicane, but it sort of feels that way. And a very similar flow to the entire sort of first part of the track. The second one being mostly straight here. Again, right and left. And again, another one to take into notice. This is where Robert Kubica had his huge accident in the mid-noughties and then into the hairpin as well for Matthew Forrest. Very, very tidy. Great traction from the rear-engine Porsche coming out of there. Through that little casino kink on the straight. And any car that has a top speed advantage will have a good time here on this track. It's something that we haven't had for a few rounds as well. As Matthew Forrest rounds the final chicane. That could have been a 0x tap to the wall there, Edward. Might just have avoided it. I'm not quite sure. We'll see here as he comes across the line. And I don't think it sets a time even. I think that might have been that tap of the wall there. A tap too much.
Yeah, tap of the wall. Well, it doesn't gain you any time. It still counts as a 0x, and that invalidates the lap completely, which is unfortunate. But that's just sometimes the way it goes. It's mainly done for oval racing to discourage wall riding, which we've seen going through in real life, of course. But
and you and I have commentated on a fair bit of NASCAR as well in iRacing over the times, and seeing that, I wouldn't have dreamt of seeing it hardly even in the sim. And I saw a clip of that guy coming through on the final lap like that on the outside. That was absolutely bonkers, and some of the craziest stuff I've seen. I guess they don't have a rule against it in NASCAR, and it's sort of fair play, but now it's sort of also set the precedent for that one, and everyone's gonna sort of do that when they need to gain positions at the end of the race, at least on the short tracks.
Yeah, I think there's no rule because I guess they didn't expect anyone to actually go ahead and do it. So I think it's brilliant, but hopefully we don't see it again, because it is, I suppose it's fair to say, not really in the spirit of racing in terms of short oval style, but it is still very good to see once. And talk about it and then hopefully never have to deal with it ever again. But what we will be seeing time and time again is drivers lapping around this brilliant circuit. Gilles Villeneuve and Charlie Nilsson still on a charge, fastest in the session by quite some margin as well.
He bettered himself on top of that, Edward. It's now up to 0.8 of a second down to Matthew Forrest. And it's still really close with everybody else, basically. So, a bit of an alien flying out in the distance. Must be so demoralizing for everyone else, at least if you're in the sort of part of the field where the success criteria is really aiming for wins, you know, and you have a driver that's just on a level where it's very hard to do anything about it, really, it seems. And it's of course also a question of almost becoming one with the car and really being able to extract everything from the machine. But it's been an impressive display so far this season overall, especially second part of the season from Charlie Lund Nielsen. Been sterling so far.
Yeah, and we'll see for how long it will continue. Looks to be the favourite now to win the whole championship is Charlie Lund Nielsen. As we watch Matthew Forrest here in the Porsche, and I have to say, the Porsche is a car that's become a lot quicker in this most recent build of iRacing. 22 Season 4, it has been the car to race in any GT3 season. We'll see, though, that at the moment, the BMW appears to be a little bit quicker around here as Gaston Maceroni goes second fastest ahead of Matthew Forrest.
So Gaston Maceroni really looking to find the pace there, but he needs an extra 6/10 from the lap he just put in. And now he's finding himself, I think that's Cucato on his tail, isn't it? Nicolas Cucato, yes. Just about to think if someone was getting held up ever so slightly there, but you know, the Coanda Racing boys want to sort of get that maximum out of every lap. Trying to get out of the way here as well. Wasn't Matthew Terry, that was one of the BMWs, wasn't it? That was Martin de Jong, obviously.
Yeah, Martin de Jong, who was a late sort of entrant, I guess, into practice. Maybe not quite up to pace immediately. Hopefully he's been able to do some time in sessions outside of the official practice session that's attached to this qualifying and race session. Because if not, he's going to really struggle around this track, because you do need a lot of laps here to know exactly where you can push and where you can't. Make sure you get all your mistakes out of the way before they have to count in the race. Look at that, massively over the curb there, close to the wall of champions. Martin de Jong will come across the timing beam across the line, and what time will it be set? Good enough for 7th. We'll be able to go into the pits, go out for probably one more out lap and then a flying lap, but that will be, I think, Martin de Jong's second to last attempt at the qualifying time.
So those 13 minutes that we've had so far here, Edward, have absolutely flown away. Incredible that these GT3 machines make it around here in just over a minute and a half. And that also says something about the average speeds around here being quite high. This is a track that really has a lot of speed coming with it, and a very, very fast back straight, of course, but also the amount of flowing high-speed corners here where you are basically flat. And it's really about being smooth on the steering wheel, really about not trying to scrub any speed off the car, really, as you make it through the turns. It's sort of that fingertip driving, isn't it, Edward?
Yeah, it is, and you do need to sort of pretty much dance the car through some of these chicanes, have it set up loose at the rear and just carry the momentum through them. up towards this final chicane. Nicholas Cocato in behind. Who's that ahead? That might be Gaston Messeroni. Going up to the line. What times will be set by this pair? Messeroni will be the first to set a time, and that is enough for second. Just 4 thousandths quicker than Matthew Forrest. Thin margins there for the top two. The battle for the front row.
Jesus, that's
up in behind Charlie Nilsson, who is still miles out in front.
It's incredible to see them battle out so close to one another, and yet there's just a driver out ahead in a league of his own. But he's also been the only driver who's really been able to extract that kind of performance from the Audi this season. We've seen Chris Roberts really struggling with it. We've seen so many other drivers as well over the times in iRacing, both in this league in particular, in this league, but also everywhere else. Basically, it's and that's what a lot of people say about the Audi as well. It's a nice car to drive until it isn't, and you really got to know where the limits are, because if you overstep, there isn't much saving it. But it's impressive to see. Matthew Forrest still in a podium position. Checkered flag has dropped here, so whoever's on a flying lap, which means I think that's pretty much everyone except for... No, that's not true, because a lot of them are going to be in the pits. So I take that back. Matthew Forrest is on a flyer, along with Pete Plastow, Martin de Jong, Trickerici, as well as Matthew Maddox and Matt Sisler. So a few cars out there still to keep an eye out on.
Matt Forrest needs a very quick final chicane because he's not done any improvements in the first or second sector. He needs this final chicane to be absolutely perfect if he's to get up onto the front row, and he's diving out of it into the pits. So that is it for qualifying for Matthew Forrest. He will have to be settling for third place, but will it be demoted further as his teammate comes across the line? Pete Plastow, will that spoil his fun, his party? Not quite, but he does manage to ruin Nicholas Cocato's fun and go up into fifth place ahead of the Argentines. So that's one position gain right at the end there for Pete Plastow. Fredo Trickerici's carrying on going, and he's top of the AM standings from Matt Maddox. Will he be able to improve on his time further? He's done better in the second sector than he has done all session long, but a bit too much curb and into the Wall of Champions. He will end his qualifying.
So we've seen the first victim claim by the wall. If it was a horror film, it would be the wall that eats up the cars, unwillingly passing by. Anyway, we have the grid order ready to display, and it's Charlie Nilsson, as we said before, on a dominant pole position, half a second clear of Gaston Messeroni, then Matthew Forrest and Remco Barlow on row 2. Pete Plastow joined by Nicholas Cocato, then Martin de Jong with Matthew Terry there on row 4. Chris Roberts is joined by the AM class pole sitter, that is Alfredo Trickerici. Then it's Matt Maddox, Ari Sherwood, and Chris Pio joined by Stephen Orrell, Cody Steek and Matt Sisler, two pro drivers there who really haven't been able to find their melody, at least not in qualifying. They'll be at the back of the grid for this one. With that said, Edward, cars will be lining up in a short few moments. It's time to get them off and racing here at Montreal.
Yeah, not a long sort of pace lap at all, is it? Just all the ways down this back straight through that final chicane. And off you go. And Charlie Nilsson will be the one to set the pace when he does move up onto the grid. I think he is the only driver we are waiting for before we can get up and running. And here we go. We see him on the grid. Actually, no, we also are waiting. I can name and shame the drivers. Matt Sisler, who comes up to the grid now. So that's everyone ready here, Hasse. And Charlie Nilsson will soon be able to get this race underway.
Yes, indeed. They're all lined up, and it's a matter of the last few moments now. The pace car is rolling. Usually we get a bit more time to either calm or build the nerves. I guess that depends on what kind of a driver you are Now you're strung up on the inside, really. Let's see how they'll all get along with this twisty turn 1, 2, 3 combination here that certainly caught drivers out before. Some manic
cat goes off
into the pits, and then it's look at Charlie. He's waiting a long time not to overtake it before the line. He will, but that's probably okay. It's in the pit lane, and they're green. That's a late start, and they're gonna have a bit of a scrap there. That's Remco Barlow on the outside of the Porsche of Matthew Forrest.
They touch a bit.
Yeah, they did indeed. Oh, and they'll touch big time there, and there's a huge calamity in behind. That's Nicolas Cucato who's been hit.
Oh, the bigger one. That is a lot of the field out of the running. And what did we say earlier, Hasse? As soon as there's a big incident, it creates a roadblock effect. So many drivers taken out. I think someone was on their roof for a moment. But the Mercedes of Cody Steeg, if we can have a look on board, he parted the waters. He managed to find a way through.
Cody Steeg, who started... Did he start last on it? No, he did not start last. Did he? Actually did, I think. He has indeed parted the waters here. Let's just try to take that from the top and see just what happened here. Let's see if we can get another angle on it.
Yeah, well, we'll watch for Matthew Forrest and Nicolas Cucato, because I think that was where a lot of the drama did seem to unfold. Matthew Forrest there in the Porsche, trying to go around the outside of the 42. Managed to keep on going. That's Remco Barlow. Then there was a bit of a moment went on, and then for some reason, I think Matthew Forrest maybe stopped to slow down or something else happened with Matthew Forrest, because he's in the pits already.
Yeah, Matthew Forrest, I think, had another incident further on. He was in the pits.
Oh, that was... Yeah, so we missed what happened to Matthew Forrest, because he looked like he got away with that.
I don't think he did. I think he was involved in what happened.
Well, it was a separate incident, I think, because there was the incident that we just saw that obviously took out...
Yeah, here we are.
Nicolas Cucato.
Oh, the car just won't turn right at all.
It was, yeah, tyre damage. It was wheel, sort of suspension damage, rather.
Yeah. That car did not want to turn left whatsoever. Oh, it goes to the right, doesn't go left at all. And a bit of troubles ensue. Anyway, we're off and racing for the rest of them. And it's Charlie Lund-Nielsen ahead of Mason
10 or
Roney.
11 that remain.
Yeah, it's a small field now, I'm afraid. Remco Barlow third ahead of Martin de Jong. They're up in fourth place, and then Pete Plesto. AM leader Alfredo Tricarici sixth overall. They're ahead of Cody Steeg, Matt Sisseler, Chris Pio, and Matthew Terry. Chris Roberts, I think.
As well to the other... Because we saw Stephen Orrell got involved in the incident, as did Ari Sherwood and Chris Roberts. So I want to see what happened to them at the beginning of the race. I think if we actually go on board with Cody Steeg, we might be able to see, because I think he had the best view of every incident that happened at that start and managed to get away from it all. So we'll have a little look through. We'll be a little ways back.
Talk us through what Cody Steeg sees here then.
Okay, so you can see just ahead, that is the Ferrari, I believe the Ferrari of Matthew Terry, who gets caught up in an incident. So I'll have a look here. Cautious into turn one. He knows that there's going to be some amount of drama, as there often is here. And there's just a big checkup. Oh, he actually does go into the back there of the Ferrari. But then there's a massive checkup. And I'm completely lost for words of what happened. But there was an Apex Tech car. I think that was Ari Sherwood that got sent skyward. I have no idea how it happened, but we could see there the incident completely parted and allowed Cody Steeg on through scot-free.
Absolutely nuts. But well driven by Cody Steeg to sneak on through in the middle there. Gaston Maceroni will be doing his utmost to cling on to the tail of Charlie Lund-Nielsen, but at the BMW here, as long as he's on the tail of the Audi in the slipstream, it'll be hard to drop him down the back straight there.
This has been a pretty chaotic beginning to the race here, but there's one row that will be happy that the chaos has been behind them, and that is Charlie Lund-Nielsen. He will have to worry about one car behind him for the moment. That is Gaston Messeroni. But for me, it appears that the pace is still beneath the wings of Charlie Lenilson for the time being. Gaston Messeroni gains a lot on these straights, this sort of last sector and first sector, just mainly because of the back straight and then the start-finish straight here. And the rest of the lap, Charlie Lenilson is much, much quicker. So we'll see how this pans out. BMW does have very good race pace, and that might translate into a bit of trouble for Charlie Nelson, but we have seen before Charlie Nelson, even when he doesn't necessarily qualify as well, he can find a lot of race pace out of his Audi. I mean, just look at the race that he won earlier on this season at the Nürburgring.
Just see how he gets the run on Gaston Messeroni through these opening 2 sectors. And especially, as we've seen before this season, that Audi on corner exit, it's so strong. And he's able to carry a sort of equal speed as everybody else through the corners, but as soon as they gotta exit, he's flying away. That gap is now 1.3 seconds. Alfredo Tricorici. He's got Matt Sisseler behind him. But behind by 14 seconds, so that was the difference between being a part of that big pileup early days and not being a part of it. I'd like to see here just what happened as well to Matthew Terry the early days. Ahead there.
For some reason the replays aren't quite working for me, Hasse, so you'll have to talk us through.
Yeah, I was just watching Matthew Terry go into the side of Gaston Messeroni. Then Chris Roberts, I think, comes across in his Audi, collects the side of one of the BMWs. That must have been Larry Sherwood. No, that wasn't. It was the green BMW of Matt Maddox, of course, getting collected there, and that created the entire mess. And that is just what Nicolas Cocato calls it as well, a mess. I think I could find no words to describe it better. That was a...
It's times like this where I'm glad not to be a race steward, at least of this series, this round, because that would be a nightmare to pick through.
That would be terrible to have to sit and look through and, but on these first lap incidents, I think ever so often it's gonna be a racing incident because people are so close, and of course you're gonna be telling the drivers to be careful and try and keep just a bit of distance while they're all bunched up, but takes so little, and especially on a track where there is nowhere to go, there is nowhere to get around, there is really no escaping whatever may unfold ahead of you, and that's, I think, quite a good example of that we've seen here today. We're 8 minutes into the race, and given that we've had that slightly chaotic start, the race has also settled rather quickly here. So I'm just scouting
it's
through.
It's been a really good start though, hasn't it, for Charlie Lenilson. Now almost 2 seconds clear.
Yeah, but with that qualifying time set, we were sort of expecting the Audi to start walking at some point, at least away from everyone else. Gaston
I think it as well
Messeroni
comes down a lot to the way that these cars operate. I mean, the BMW out of the blocks is really, really good for the first lap, maybe even 2 laps. But then the tyres start to wear, and you get into a bit of a rhythm with it. But it's nowhere near as quick as I think the times that something like the Audi can do consistently. The Audi doesn't have such a steep drop off, but it does drop off as the stint progresses. So with the BMW, you have 2 really good laps, and then it drops off quick. But then it stays at that level for a long, long time. You can go till about 30% on the tyres and still be able to get those lap times you were doing after about 4 laps into a stint. So it is a very nice car over a longer race. Whereas the Audi, it doesn't have that same immediate drop off. It has sort of those 2 really good laps, and then the pace starts to wane away. There's more of like a sort of a downward slope rather than a cliff and a plateau, which is an interesting sort of tweak between the 2 cars and the ways that they manage the rubber and the tyre performance, which is why we see Charlie Nilsson able to take advantage of that now, and in doing so has been able to break the toe, which does mean that Gaston Maceroni will find it harder to keep up with Charlie Nilsson. But maybe towards the end of the race, we might see the pace start to work more in the favour of the BMW. But I don't think the race is actually long enough for it to properly even out. And I think in these 45-minute races, you want the more sprinty Audi in this situation.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it has something to do with the fact that the Audi does have quite a bit more rotation on the rear end naturally, and it doesn't have to work the front tires nearly as hard to make the car turn. And as such, it's going to be wearing all 4 tires much more evenly than I think the BMW is going to be able to. But that's also what makes it difficult to drive. It's what makes it difficult to drive as well. Of course, it's something to do with driving style and not turning. It sounds simple, but it's actually surprisingly hard to do once you're anywhere near the limits of one of these cars, of what one of these cars will do. But it's to not turn the wheel more than you need to when you're steering. As I said, it sounds simple. It really isn't.
It's also, like I was saying, Hasse, just down to the different lines you can take, because the Audi has got a lot more slow speed rotation compared to the BMW. So the Audi can turn a bit later on into the corner, whereas the BMW, it turns better at slightly higher speed. So you do your turning, the initial point, a bit sooner, and because you're doing the main bulk of your turning at a higher speed, it scrubs the rubber even more, whereas the Audi, you can see it taking slightly different lines. An especially good place to see is that final hairpin, because it's a lot easier for Charlie Nilsson to go for the later apex than it is for Gaston Maceroni.
That's a very good point here. Remco Barlow has had a relaxed race, dare I say, so far, in 3rd place, with a 4-second gap to Maceroni up ahead, 3-second gap down to Pete Plastow. Same story as well for Martin de Jong. Nicolas Cocato misses his Audi. I think you're only missing, because I miss driving the Audi sometimes too, Edward, and that's until I see someone crashing an Audi in that very specific Audi way where the rear starts going and there's nothing you can do about it, and then you're like, yes, that's why it's a tough machine to drive. I remember one particular incident I had at I think that must have been the very first time I did the 24 hours of Spa, and I got Blanchimont in the Audi. And Blanchimont in the GT3s being one of the hardest corners, I think, in sim racing. Because the more you're afraid of it, the more dangerous it becomes, especially in a car that tends to over-rotate if you let off the throttle coming through the corner. So if you come in too quickly, you don't quite believe it, you tend to lift off the throttle again, and then you're gonna have a big crash. And of course, that's what happened to me as well.
For me, around that circuit, I'd imagine one of the hardest ones as well, at least in the Audi especially, would be Pouhon. That downhill left-hander is an absolute nightmare in a car that likes that rear rotation, because as soon as it does step out even slightly at that amount of high speed and through that undulation, there is very little you can do to help save it, because already going downhill, the rear end of the car is very light.
That's true, but in Pouhon, you'd need to brake naturally. So you're on the brakes, you're slowing down, and that's just... The margins are thinner in Blanchimont. Blanchimont isn't on the brakes. Blanchimont's a lift. A slight lift coming off. And that seems to be what's made it so difficult. I think you explained it
well, actually, as well, through Pouhon, which is why it is quite difficult, because you are braking it. It does pitch the nose down a bit more and raise the rear up, which makes it even more twitchier, which is never fun.
No, that's true. That's true. And it's one of those corners where if you come in too quickly, you're gonna be sliding for a few seconds until you hit the tires there on the right-hand side of the track. No such things here on this track, but on the other hand, also a rare found thing here at Montreal to actually have any space to crash into.
Rare thing as well as any undulation. It is completely different to Spa, and the fact that it is pretty much as flat as a board here.
I'd love to know the driver's gaming setup. I'd love to know what kind of rig they're on and what kind of wheel they're on as well. Wheelbase, wheel, pedals. Not saying that it necessarily makes a... Well, it does make a difference. Or it does make a big difference. I have a Logitech G29 myself, and a good friend of mine owns a Fanatec CSL. So just coming from the G29 onto the CSL, which is by now sort of what you would call probably legacy technology. Speaking of the G29, is as legacy as it gets by now. It's basically a Logitech G25, slightly updated. But the Fanatec CSL just felt so smooth and forceful and quiet, and you know, like that in itself would have been a big step up. And then of course a lot of these drivers are going to be on some kind of direct drive wheelbase that emulates whatever force comes through the steering wheel much better indeed, and has a much shorter reaction time. And with that I mean the wheel is simply able to turn on itself back and forth quicker without any resistance, really.
So we've got a bit of a close battle going on between Matthew Terry, I think, and Matt Sisler. We can see Matthew Terry in behind. He closed that gap down very sharply. There was a moment I thought the positions were going to swap over, but it is the BMW versus the Porsche, the two Americans going at it here, and you can see the Porsche, you can get that slow speed rotation and go for the later apex. The BMW has to do its turning a lot early. You can see went for an earlier apex. The BMW also partially to cover off the advancing Porsche and all the way down towards the chicane. A very defensive line being taken by Matt Sisler. But in towards the chicane, it will be the BMW ahead of the Porsche. But can the Porsche get a good run? No, just a little bit unsettled. It wasn't able to get the power down too early. And there was a scrape of the wall, actually, from Matt Sisler. He's pushing that hard that he brushed against the wall of champions.
Certainly not the last time we'll see that tonight. I think it's a fun thing with the Porsche being rear engine, and it really requires a specific driving style, as Matthew Terry is... I think he knows that this is the part of the track where the Porsche does really have an advantage on the BMW on exit speeds, where you can try to line it up, but it's just a difficult place to do it as well, given that the track twists back and forth on itself. You're going to want to straight line the corners, and that means that anyone coming for an overtake is always going to have to take the long way around, and that makes it all the more difficult here. Matthew Terry yet again searching for a way past.
No, it might be out of shape here. Just a little bit of a squirrely exit from the BMW, and he's going to be pinned in tight towards the hairpin. They're both late as they dare onto the brakes, but this Porsche with a switchback. Oh, he just turns in slightly too early and isn't able to get the switchback fully completed. Does Matthew Terry. He hits the apex about a meter or so too soon.
I think he was just trying to set it up coming down here, Edward.
Yeah, he just didn't quite get it nailed down. He has a good run, but he's still going to be forced to go. Oh, that was a little bit cheeky by Matt Sisler. It moved over far too late. That could have been a very nasty incident there. I'm not sure what you made of that, Hasse, but that looked a bit like a bit of a cheeky block there by Matt Sisler.
Yeah, cheeky block, but also a scent that wasn't really stamped. And by that I mean, of course, that he didn't... Matthew Terry maybe could have been a little bit more clear with his intentions in that situation, but on the other hand, you're that close, coming into a tight corner at the end of a straight. Of course, the overtaking attempt is going to come, and especially since the Porsche is having a bit of a hard time, maybe it's the front end damage hampering it a little bit. It's never been the quickest car in a straight line, the Porsche. touching upon it before, but it needs a special way of driving it. And if you do it wrong, you get what you don't want when you don't want it. You get understeer when you want the car to rotate, and when you want the car to grip up, it oversteers on you. Here comes Matthew Terry again. And this time...
Much nicer exit here.
Yeah.
He should have him. Into the slipstream. He's going to have a lot more of a more significant overlap in towards the braking zone now.
Yeah.
They will be neck and neck, just the nose ahead by Matthew Terry into the braking zone. Can he brave it around the outside and get the move done? Huge bump over the curbs, but he nails it down. But he needs to be worried about Matt Sisler now coming back at him in towards turn one. The slipstream is there from the BMW around the outside now towards the inside as they brake for the left-hander. And you can see how late Matthew Terry broke to get that move nailed on. He parks it on the apex through the second part of that first corner complex. And he gets the move done.
Great move there in the end. Well thought from Matthew Terry. Matt Sisler trying to get back there. As you said, braving it around the outside in that first part of the final chicane. I think that sums it up pretty well here, Edward. Let's just have another look.
Matt Sisler really is struggling now. Actually, he had a massive hole, sort of an armful of oversteer, not understeer rather, just through that last chicane. Let's have a look at this move yet again, and you can see just how nicely the switchback is executed. It's that apex so beautifully right at the end of the corner. And then side by side they come all the way down this back straight and in towards this chicane, the final chicane. Braving it around the outside, you can see he absolutely mashes it over the curb. And then there's the worrying thing when you see you've not got the greatest exit. The car behind you does. Goes to the outside. Which would become the inside, but he brakes a little bit too early. Look how late Matthew Terry does brake to make sure he's ahead going into the first corner. Knows that he won't be as quick through the second corner, but realizes that holding the inside line through there will pretty much seal a move. And it did. As we see the first few pit stops coming through, actually. That's Remco Barlow coming in for his first and only stop, you would imagine, of the race, as does Pete Plastow.
Yeah.
Comes out onto the track just in behind Matt Sisler, is he? No, he's ahead of Matt Sisler and behind Matthew Terry. So for all of that, now Pete Plastow is splitting this battling pair. Battle of the Mats. Terry coming out on top on that occasion, but there's still plenty of time to go in the race.
Yeah. Oh, Charlie Lund-Nielsen now 6.5 seconds clear of Gaston Maceroni there. And some lap cars in between him as well. So really evident how the race pace of the Audi stays that little bit more consistent. Again, that's with everything basically with the Audi until it doesn't. But as long as you've got it under control, it is a deadly weapon in the right hands. Martin de Jong here, third place for him at the moment, of course, with the pit stops having gone on a bit further up. He might just be there to pick up something at the end of this one. We'll be following that with interest. Pete Plastow there, just having done that pit stop relatively early. I think he went in to cover off Remco Barlow, but Remco Barlow is quite a bit ahead. But of course, Matthew Terry will have to have another pit stop, Edward, at the end of the race. That stop for him would have come too early to be able to have any chance of finishing. So with that, that's going to hamper him. Well, not just big time, really, really big time indeed. Here's Pete Plastow's got a bit of pace on him as well. The Ferrari looking good. Closing down the gap here over the last lap. And of course he knows as well, if he wants to get a move on Remco Barlow at any point of this race, he needs to get clear of Matthew Terry, maybe the grunt of the Ferrari. If you can get a good run here, a good run down here towards the hairpin. More importantly, from the hairpin with the slipstream, that might just happen. It seems poised here, the Ferrari. Porsche's all over the place. Definitely missing the apex there on the first part of the final. Well, it's not the final chicane, is it really? And it's not really even a chicane. It's sort of those weird chicane-ish corner complexes that at least maybe were meant to be that way from the beginning of this track's lifetime. 0.4 of a second. That's going to be quite hard to close down here. And Matthew Terry certainly having decent pace in the Porsche. Pete Plastow sending it well, a cent and a half through that final chicane with the Wall of Champions. A bit of a look here, just making his presence felt.
It does seem a bit quicker through that situation, but because we pit early, he's now going to be in traffic, and it's about for position, Hasse. I mean, Matthew Terry is not obliged to leave Pete Plastow in your room just because Pete Plastow is yet to pit. We obviously know Matt Terry pitted at the start of the race, so he will need to pit again.
There's someone who didn't want to fight for that position between teammates here. Alfredo Trucarici getting out of the way of Remco Barlow. Trucarici, though, having done a really good race so far here as well. Up to his usual best. Chilling about. Bird's eye view on all the cars. Well, we do have the blimp cam. Be warned that you can't see that much from up there. Well, we can give it a go. Just see how it all looks, but I don't see much of everything in that regard. We do have the track map as well, but that's rather ungainly to look at here. This is a good shot, though, of Trucarici rolling into the pits. He's going to have his stop done here with 19 minutes of racing to go, Edward. And no real competition in the shape of the other AM cars, who were more or less all held up by that early incident. And a bit of a free pass for Alfredo Trucarici, who didn't. And should be able to regain ahead of Ari Sherwood. Ari Sherwood, who was in early for a pit stop as well, to fix damage, to get that fast repair, but no more than that. Cody Steek has had a moment here, I'm afraid, Edward. Let's see what happened.
Yeah, we'll have a look. I don't think my replay is quite working.
Oh, that's Cody Steek, and a major hit in the Wall of Champions he goes. And that is heavy, to say the very least. And I'm afraid we're not going to be seeing more of that Mercedes. If not for tonight, then at least for quite some time here, as Charlie Lund-Nielsen is into the pits. And Maceroni's going a bit longer here. And this hasn't been the usual long going as well from Charlie Lund-Nielsen. Usually we've seen him go way past the 30-minute marker, but not the case here tonight, Edward.
No, Charlie Nielsen opting for a slightly earlier pit stop. And Gaston Maceroni, his turn to lead the race, but after the pit stop, Charlie Nielsen comes out in second place, so he's unlikely to have his grand slam of fastest lap pole position, leading every single lap race victory, but
Martin de Jong out here.
Still going to be very difficult to imagine anyone other than Charlie Nielsen coming through to win this race.
Look at Martin de Jong. He's out clear of Matthew Terry and Pete Plastow, so that's well played by Martin de Jong. He's only 4.2 seconds down on Remco Barlow. So there's a bit of a Dutch battle for that final step on the podium. And you have to wonder just where Gaston Maceroni is going to come out in all of this. De Jong's had a good part of his stint coming up towards the pit stop. I think he's been finding the pace slowly but surely. And looking at the best laps there, still it's all very close, of course. We need the manufacturers.
Just watching Maceroni now into the pits. So that will mean that Charlie Nielsen comes back up through to you'd imagine, retake the lead of the race. Just waiting for him to go past him now as Gaston Maceroni. Yep, gets passed by Charlie Nilsson. Pete Price are still behind Matthew Terry. Not really able to find a way through either.
So Terry's in for his second and final stop of this race. I think thought might as well just get it over with. Gaston Maceroni's come out though just ahead of Remco Barlow. And with just 5 seconds down to Martin de Jong, it's not going to take a lot of fighting from these two teammates to bring a third BMW into the battle for second place here. It all could heat up within the final 15 minutes of this race, and certainly having a battle for second here, it's more than we've had for a while. And Remco Barlow seems to be the man with the momentum at the moment here.
Yeah, it seems to be at this present moment in time, but we will see, because sometimes momentum does shift in favour of one driver, then another. Yeah, Remco Barlow does appear to be pretty quick at the moment. Watching this as well, Matthew Terry has come out in behind Alfredo Tricorici.
Yeah, just behind.
Alfredo, who does not need to make any more pit stops, came in on lap 16, just one lap before Charlie Nilsson. So he should be good to go until the end. So that means this will be a battle for on-track position, but Alfredo Tricorici, as an M-Class driver, doesn't necessarily need to worry about fighting a Pro-Class driver.
I think if the move becomes clear enough, sort of, from...
I mean, he left a lot of room, to be fair, in towards the hairpin. Didn't cover off the inside whatsoever. I think he's pretty much just waiting for the Porsche to be close enough to send a move up the inside, but it doesn't seem to be that way at the moment.
Back with the battle for second. Maceroni and Remco Barlow. Does look like Maceroni's picked up the pace ever so slightly here, Edward, and he would need to, of course. Or maybe Remco Barlow's just overdriven it, and you know the BMW is prone to this as well. If you drive it too hard for a lap or two, you get that overheating at the front. They stop biting. There's just nothing you can really do about it. The only thing that really works is slowing down, and you have to do so for quite some time in the end. And it's something that you really have to avoid doing, I guess. It's so hard.
I think what we've seen, though, is that Gaston Maceroni had a difficult outlap, and that's just because the tyres get very cold sitting stationary for so long. So now that the tyres are going back up to temperature for Gaston Maceroni, he's able to...
I'm not quite sure about that, because I'm sorry, I might just correct you before you go on, Edward, because you got to take into consideration these are 14-second pit stops. They come in with brakes that are 400 degrees. Usually what you see does
bring down the temperatures quite a lot. They like to be in that sort of window for a long period of time, and going lap after lap after lap, you get a certain amount of heat in the tyres, and it sort of sits in that window quite happily. And then as soon as you get warm tyres that cool down just a touch, it can be a bit tricky.
And they might have changed it, but I just remember having driven the LMP2 car, that when you come in for a stop and you don't change the tires actually heat up while stationary in the pits, because the brakes have so much heat in them and you don't get the cooling air from moving. So there might be a dispute to your claim there, Mr.
Well, maybe it's the other way around there. Maybe it's because they get too hot. It's not good.
That's what I'm thinking. That's actually what I'm thinking, because you come out the pits and the tires have more temperature in them than you're used to, and all of a sudden you sort of have to get them back into the working window.
Or we might be both wrong, and it was just a bit of a scruffy act for Remco Barlow, and he's now picking up the pace because he's brought the gap back down.
There is nothing like sitting here commentating on a race and speculating, Edward. I love speculations. And making guesses. Sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong, but in the end, it's a qualified guess. It's a good run though here from Barlow. Very good run coming down into turn 1. He might just get it done here. Very defensive from Maceroni, but the outside could work here if he could stick on to it. Oh, and I think Remco Barlow just saved both himself and his teammate in that situation. Gaston Maceroni with a bit of a squinch there.
A squinch?
A squinch, yeah. That's a new one, I guess. But I know you know what I mean. The car just did a little bit of a whoop whoop. A
squeezy pinch.
A squeezy pinch, a squinch. Yes, exactly. It's just what it did. Brilliant.
Yeah, like we were saying, we like to speculate, but we sort of make predictions, prophecies that immediately turn out to be false. So we are very good at doing that. Something that Charlie Nilsson is very good at doing is going quickly, as he just sets the fastest Sector 2 of anybody on that last lap. So even with worn tyres, he still finds a way to go that little bit quicker than everybody else. Here we go, though. Defensive goes Gaston Maceroni. I don't think he really needs to, as Remco Barlow wasn't too close, but Remco can't put the power down coming out of the hairpin. So Maceroni will have a bit more breathing room going all the way down towards this last chicane. But we've seen Remco Barlow get very good exits from here before. Just that last lap, it's all kicked off by a brilliant run from the Dutchman. I'll have a look again just to see coming through. Both of them managed to get through that nice and cleanly. Yeah, get Charlie Nilsson very quick. That last lap time was well over a second faster than what these two are doing at this moment in time. That is ridiculous from Charlie.
But it's also going to be music to the ears of Charlie Nilsson that they're fighting behind him right now, and that he's just going to be able to continue at his own pace. He knows that no matter what he does, basically, he's going to be quicker, because fighting really costs you a lot. And it's a bit of a capitulation from both of these as well, that they know that they're fighting for a second, rather than teaming up to try and catch the leader, because he's basically 15 seconds up the road. With under 15 minutes to go, there's actually just 9 minutes left now of racing. Roger, not exactly. They're very close. They're all around the 500 horsepower marker, just there or thereabouts. The cars do have an individual BOP applied by iRacing on a season-to-season basis, so they get nip and tuck back and forth relatively to one another, and in terms of the finer balancing that's done. But they're also all built to the same specifications in terms of the regulations, and they can have no more than 500 horsepower. I think they can be no lighter than 1,300 kilos. And there's also a certain drag coefficient that they're not allowed to go underneath, which means the car's not allowed to be more slippery than so-and-so in terms of cutting through the air and being fast in a straight line. And then, of course, in terms of how you build the GT3 machines, they're all very open. The BMW is powered by but is that a 4-cylinder turbo?
I think it's a 6-cylinder. I think it's twin turbo.
It's a 6-cylinder twin turbo, isn't it? Yeah. The Ferrari is an 8-cylinder turbo. The Audi is a V10.
The reason. Naturally. Oh my word! There's a lot of traffic here.
Yeah. Oh, that might just open up an opportunity or two here for Remco Barlow, as they're closer than they've ever been, and coming down towards.
That is very sketchy there. Gaston Maceroni darting to the inside at the last possible minute to cover off the advancing Remco Barlow. They will continue to go side by side, and the more they battle, the more Martin de Jong will be able to close up and potentially get involved in this battle and maybe snag a podium. They continue to go side by side. Around the outside, he'll be able to get on the power a little bit easier, can Remco Barlow, and with the better run, he should be maybe able to get his nose just ahead
Maceroni's got the slipstream.
He's got the slipstream from the car ahead, but now Remco Barlow gets the slipstream from the Porsche of Matthew Forrest. They will go completely pretty much equal in towards, and they do touch in towards the final chicane. And Remco Barlow has to take over onto the escape road. And I think actually that is Gaston Messeroni slowing down to not overtake Remco Barlow while he serves a slowdown penalty. We'll have a little look at this, Hasse, but I'm not sure if Remco Barlow either turned in or maybe it was a case of Messeroni running out of road. Messeroni's actually been overtaken by Martin de Jong throughout all of this, so we'll keep watching the fight. We'll watch through the replay, and then we'll keep our eyes focused on Gaston Messeroni.
So I don't even think they touched.
Netcode.
Yeah, it's a netcode or a braking, like getting unstable on the braking and turning at the same point. Maybe. But Messeroni slowed down a lot there.
Oh,
like a
that
whole
was
lot.
almost a big incident as well.
And I wonder if he got a slowdown somehow as well. I'm not quite sure about that. Plastow's passed on Messeroni too, and Messeroni's gone off. And come back as well, so you wonder what the hell has happened here. He's had an incident, I think maybe here with Chris Pio's blinks. Oh, and that is just the most unfortunate set of circumstances, Edward.
Oh, and then he goes into the wall.
Yeah, that's gonna be so frustrating for Gaston Messeroni. Chris Pio is in there on the inside, and if he blinks for Messeroni like he blinked for us there, that's gonna be nowhere to tell that he was actually still in there. 4 minutes till the end of this race. Charlie Lund-Nielsen leading Remco Barlow and Martin de Jong. 2 Dutchmen on the podium, but a Swede atop it. And it very much looks like that's gonna be the outcome of this race as well in a few minutes time. 22.5 seconds clear. But this battle, Edward, Martin de Jong smells blood and he smells another place here ahead of him. And he looks to have the pace in the BMW. And we've seen it before. We've seen it before with Martin de Jong that all of a sudden he finds something from somewhere and pulls out a level of pace.
It's always right at the end of the race.
Yeah.
Did not have the pace at all, did he, in the qualifying session? Going out in, I think, 7th place was where he started this race. Could be up to second after all has been said and done here tonight. But there is not long left to go in this race. Where is the leader? I think China's pretty much just crossed the line already. So we have, 3 minutes to go. It's almost 2 laps. There you go, yep, we will have this lap and I think one more afterwards for Martin de Jong and Remco Barlow to battle away for. This is going to be really intriguing, isn't it? Has to see how this unfolds. The 2 BMWs. Again, Remco Barlow, we did say, looked like to have a lot of pace relative to Gaston Messeroni, who is still in the pits. I will stress he's not come back out on circuit after that incident.
That's Pat Maddox ahead in his BMW. He got out of the way.
Yeah, did not want to be any part of that. Very wise.
Not at this part of the race, no. Oh, de Jong's falling behind ever so. Oh no, de Jong's had it! And he's just touched the grass there coming out of the corner. And that's gonna lead Pete Plastow onto the podium at this late stage of the race. Heartbreak for Martin de Jong. Oh, that's terrible, Edward. As we're gonna see, it's just on the curb.
There's a dip there, as you can see on the exit of that curb. There's a little dip right on the very exit of that
look
corner.
At here, just see if we can. Yeah. Oh, that is such bad luck. He clocks the barrier, and then several hits to what looks like the area around the right front suspension as well.
It looks like a relatively front-on impact, and the side-on impact that he had with the wall didn't look too significant. So I think he might
like it's crabbing a bit.
It's a little bit, but that should be enough to carry on to the end of the race without needing a mandatory pit stop.
Well, hopefully he's not going to have the meatball flag.
If we have a look, can we go on board and have a look at his steering wheel? No, we can't. The BMW does not let us do that. It's horrendous. I forget every single time. And then we go on board, I'm immediately disappointed.
Yeah, I've done that, Edward, so many times. Like, oh, let's see if his steering wheel is straight. And then, well, obviously that steering wheel is not straight because we can see the car misbehaving in all sorts of ways there. Hard break for Martin de Jong. He's got 25 seconds down to Matthew Terry. It's one lap he has to hold on. Should be okay there. Matthew Forrest has crashed and gone to the pits as well. He'll be out of it for now. Charlie Lund Nielsen is coming down the back straight. And there we have it. He's going to win this one as well. And further advance on his lead in the championship standings. Through the final chicane one final time. It's going to be another win. For the superior Swede, it's Charlie Lund Nielsen. The Black Wolf. Or just Black Wolf, I don't know. I just saw it in chat earlier. But another dominant display by Charlie Lund Nielsen. Taking the race win ahead of Remco Barlow. Did have it hot there for a second. When he got company from Martin de Jong. Martin de Jong, who... It's another heartbreak moment. We've seen it. And just like a cloud of bad luck hanging across his head, Edward. And it's to a level where you can hardly explain it. He's had another issue, I'm afraid. But he's across the line. Right about here. And he does come home in 4th place. That was actually... almost a clean double barrel roll. That was pretty impressive. And he pulled that off there. Matthew Terry gets 5th ahead of, I think that'll be Chris Roberts in the Audi. Comes home for 6th place. And then the next car is going to be the AM class leader for tonight, Alfredo Tricarici, who will also be increasing his lead in the championship standings. From what I can see, Edward, only one other car looks to be finishing an AM here tonight. Chris Pio, of course, is going to pick up the points, and I guess that goes for everybody else as well. But
Chris Pio did manage to finish. I think Matt Maddox also.
Matt Maddox got through, didn't he? Yeah, he did. Yeah, they're just through.
I think it was Maceroni also managed to get back out on the track after the incident that saw him towed to the pits. So good to see him able to get back out on track and at least get some points on the board for his championship.
A driver who won't be too pleased about the result tonight, probably Ari Sherwood. He's hoping for maybe recovering his AM class championship charge, but that missed round 2 weeks ago was gonna be hard to recover from, I'm afraid, for him. Anyways, I'm gonna go to the results, Edward, and then I guess you can take us through it. While I cue the music.
If we can. Charlie Lund Nielsen, the super Swede, coming through to win the race by a margin of 24 seconds to Remco Barlow. Dominant drive there from Charlie Lund Nielsen. Remco Barlow was a cool head in a pretty chaotic race, so a 2nd place is well deserved. And Pete Plastow, hats off for the consistency that he showed while everyone else was getting involved in incidents and accidents. He was able to keep it going on the straight and narrow and secure 3rd place finish. Martin de Jong, therefore, Angry Sheepsons looked for all the world to be in with a contention of a 2nd place, let alone at the podium, but one late mistake put paid to his hopes and saw him finish down in 4th place. But of Matthew Terry, Matt in Black, going back brilliantly. It's fair to say after that early race incident for 5th place, that is certainly no small achievement. Chris Roberts there in 6th place. before we come down to 7th place. The first of the AM drivers, Alfredo Tricarici, who we didn't really see much of this race, but no news is often good news if you're an AM driver, and it certainly was for the Coanda Racing entrant here in the AM class. Matt Sizzler next up, 8th overall, 7th in Pro, ahead of Ari Sherwood, who missed out, like you said, Hasse, at the last round, so good to get some strong points on the board, but to get his championship really on track, he would have hoped for the win that was just eluding him here tonight. Chris Pio there, rounding out the AM podium, brilliant result, and also a top 10 in AM. That is a testament to his achievement so far this season to bag that very impressive result. Gaston Messeroni, well, he was having a brilliant race, and then it all came undone right at the end to finish in 11th place, ahead of Matthew Forrest, who had his own trials and tribulations and pretty tumultuous evening, along with the rest of the finishers. Matt Maddox finishes in 13th, and then drivers who will likely be classified as non-finishers: Cody Steeg, Nicholas Cucato, and Stephen Orrell.
Yes, indeed, and that's the name of the game when you have mayhem on lap 1 like we seem to have today, but it's you hate to see it, but it's something you have to live with once in a while, I'm afraid, and it's tonight just had to be one of those nights. We're about to have some drivers join us for some of those lovely interviews. Edward, I'll have you go first. You pick the driver, you pull him in, you have a talk to him.
Yeah, let's have a look and see who we can bring in. Just got to make sure we can make them right. Why not, Hasse? Do you want to have a talk to, or shall I bring in our race winner, the Super Swede, Charlie Lund Nilsson?
Yeah, hey guys.
Hello there, Charlie. That was a very good evening's worth of racing for you. You sadly weren't able to quite get the Grand Slam, as you pitted a lap earlier and weren't able to lead every single lap, but aside from that, pretty dominant when you win by 24 seconds.
Yeah, I'll take it. I'm fine with not leading. I'm fine with leading every lap except for one.
Yeah, it's not too bad. As long as you lead the last lap, that's all that counts in terms of the standings. And speaking of the standings, you're going to have a healthy lead in the championship standings coming into the final couple of rounds. Surely your focus has got to be on getting the maximum amount of points in those last two and securing the championship as soon as you can.
Definitely, but I think I have a pretty good grip on the championship now. But I saw Remco was second, and I think he's second in the championship. So I don't know how he's still clinching on. So it's still a battle at the top, I think.
Yeah, it's still on there. You might be able to, depending on how results go your way, I think next round you might be able to secure it, but I'm sure you'll imagine it will go all the way with the competitors around you. Yeah, of course. I hope it gets competitive towards the last race. But I will, of course, do my best to secure it at Daytona. Yeah, people do sometimes say that it's easier to chase than to lead. Are you starting to feel the pressure going into this late stage of the season, or do you find that being in the lead with the last two rounds is a bit easier for you?
Wow, I would definitely prefer to be in the lead. Yeah, I think I have a pretty good grasp on both Daytona and Spa, so I'm feeling confident for sure.
No nerves, that's all cool, calm and collected. As Charlie Lund knows it appears. Congratulations, mate, on your dominant performance here tonight. But before we say goodbye to you, is there anybody you'd like to shout out on the broadcast?
Yeah, as usual, all my friends are watching, and my parents.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you very much, Charlie. We'll look to see you next time out in Daytona and see maybe the championship will get wrapped up. Maybe it'll go all the way. We shall see and find out later on.
Yeah, thanks you guys. Great job as usual.
So there we go, Hasse. That was Charlie Lund Nilsson coming in for a quick chat with us. And I see you've brought in the driver you want to talk to next. So take it away, Hasse.
Well, of course I've brought in Martin de Jong. What a performance, Martin, and it just unraveled all the way at the end. It looked to be one of those lightning strikes from you, but I guess lightning struck in another way in the end there, and it was pretty terrible.
To be fair, I was laughing my ass off when it happened. I really had something like, of course I did that. No, it was a shame. It was a fun race up until then. Was very lucky to get in the mix with Remco and Gaston. Yeah, and then ending it like that, it's a bummer, but yeah, it's my story.
And you came through that whole turn one incident and that whole debacle alive, basically. What did you see coming through there on the first few corners?
Well, I saw a lot happening in front of me, and in the end, I only drive single screen, so that makes it much harder. I saw some guys to the right, and also, yeah, kind of bumping to the right, and I had one gap, and I just went for that gap, kept my line, and just hoping the other people around me wouldn't like bump off the guardrail or into each other and then back into my trajectory, but that didn't happen, so I was very lucky there.
And yet, even though all that taken into consideration, you did have some brilliant pace today. You were on the cusps of a podium until the very last minutes of the race. Are you gonna approach the last two races of the season with that same sort of attitude, and let's just see what comes?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, it's all about having fun now for the final races, and especially Spa. Let's see what I can do there. Been there also with another league, and it went pretty well over there. So setup-wise, I'm also very good. Also good there. Yeah, so especially looking forward to Spa, and I'm not expecting anything, so it can only be positive in the end.
Brilliant, Martin. Thanks for joining us, and part of you and the entire ASS team. Is there anyone you'd like to give a thanks or a shout out to?
To all the other asses. No, I mean to you guys, stunning good job again with the broadcast. Thank you very much, and also the organization of this great league. It really hurts me a little bit to see the numbers down of participation. But I really hope we can get the numbers up for the final few races.
That would be great to see indeed, Martin. Thanks for taking the time to have a chat. Always a pleasure, and I hope we get the chance to chat away again one of these final rounds.
Will do my best.
So that was Martin de Jong, and a nice, always look on the bright side of life sort of attitude there. Edward, I'll leave it up to you to pull in the last driver for interview duty here tonight.
Well, we've had a couple of drivers through, and I think why not bring in a man who had was in the middle of quite a lot of action here tonight. Remco Barlow, who joins us. So Remco, I mean, congratulations on your evening tonight with the second place. Trailing us just a little bit too quick for you, but I mean, you had a hectic evening, didn't you? Battling away with your teammate, and then for a bit of time, Martin de Jong at the end of the race. Just talk us through those closing stages.
Well, first of all, thank you, and congratulations, of course, to Charlie and also Pete for his third place. It was a little bit hectic. First, at the start with Messi Foz, we had a bit of netcode, and after that he spun as well, so I was immediately P3. And I tried to be consistent and maybe catch up to Charlie and Gaston, but they were a little bit too quick for me. And then after my pit stop, I was now after Gaston his pit stop, he was right in front of me, like a second in front of me. So we started battling, and I was definitely a bit quicker than him. And going side by side almost in the last section, it's not a good thing to do. But I think that I was a little bit in front, and I saw netcode as well in the replay. So.
Yeah, there was a healthy amount of netcode, to say the least, in that incident. Shame that it put down you and put your teammate down the order afterwards. But to be fair, you had a lot of pace here tonight. It was a really good race. Just what went wrong though in qualifying? Because with the pace you showed in the race, I would have imagined you would have been hoping for a bit better in qualifying.
Yeah, well, qualify it was close. If I was like 2/10 faster, I could have been P2 maybe. But I don't know, just small mistakes, stupid mistakes. So I have to make up for it in the race, and that's what I try to do always. So.
Well, you certainly did exactly that. I mean, to be fair, with the pace of Charlotte Nilsson, everyone else was fighting for second place. So essentially for you, this is a bit like a win.
Yeah, definitely is, yeah.
Around you. So huge congratulations to you. Going into the next round, we will be at Daytona, a circuit that I think might favour the BMW. Is that one that you agree with?
Yeah, it might because the BMW with straight line speed, I'm just a little bit afraid of the understeer that might come in turn 1 or something, but we'll see.
I will say it is a dream to drive the BMW around Daytona. I've done it many a time, and it is a brilliant car and track combo. So no matter what it is, whatever your pace will be, I'm sure you'll have plenty of fun. Definitely plenty of fun to run out the season, because there is still a championship to think about. And is your mind focused on that, or is it just about the races?
Charlie is just so fast, so yeah, we'll see what comes. I will just enjoy myself. That's the most important part.
That certainly is, mate. Congratulations. Before we let you get off and enjoy the rest of the evening, is there anybody you'd like to shout out on the broadcast?
I would like to shout out to you two guys. Thank you for the commentating again. And to my team iRacing and my other team WPR Racing, and of course to our Dutch SIMRACING podcast, SimCraft.
No problem as well. Thank you very much for the kind words, and we'll wish you all the best next time out at Daytona.
Yeah, thank you guys. See ya.
So Hasse, that was Remco Barlow having the final lead interview with us for the evening. I think that is all the time we have, so we can now look forward to the next evening's worth of racing at Daytona.
2 weeks from now, same time, same place, and it's not gonna be one to miss at it's Daytona. It's the best. It's maybe the best race in the world, I guess, and yet it's not. Because it's it's a track that's sort of weird. It's sort of this infield, and it's an oval, and yet it's not. But there's so much history to it, and so much vibe to it, and it does lend itself to some pretty good racing. And I hope we'll get a taste of that in 2 weeks' time here. So don't miss it. And I'll probably do some more singing, and I'll actually probably see if we can launch the stream with the old Daytona theme there, right? We probably should. Let's do that. Anyway, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in with us tonight here on Virtual Racing Compound up in Hasse Rømer, joined by Ed May. It's been the utmost of pleasures having you all along. So until then, and until next time, take care, have fun, and bye-bye.